Life is full of things to manage: your work, your family, your plans, and your treatment. Consider Kesimpta, ofatumumab 20 milligram injection. You can take it yourself from the comfort of home. If you're ready for something different, ask your healthcare provider about Kesimpta and check out the details at kesimpta.com. Brought to you by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
Support for this podcast comes from Verizon Business. Verizon Business Unlimited plans, unlimited data, no overages, and more. Built right for business with the speed of Verizon 5G. Get Verizon Business Unlimited plans from as low as $30 per line. Visit verizon.com/business/plans. Per month with 5 lines on Business Unlimited start. Includes paper-free billing with autopay and select smartphone agreement discounts. Taxes, fees, and terms apply. 5G nationwide available in 2,700 plus cities on most Verizon 5G devices. 5G ultra-wideband available only in parts of select cities.
Did you know that indecision is costing you money? When employees get stuck in indecision loops, it can impact their work, the work of others, commitments to clients, and ultimately, your bottom line. Give your employees access to coaching when they need to stop indecision loops and keep your business moving forward. Visit grandheroninternational.ca/podcast to learn about the Grand Heron Plus program for corporations.
This podcast is part of the C-Suite Radio Network, turning the volume up on business.
Welcome to the Keep Leading Podcast, a podcast dedicated to promoting leadership development and sharing leadership insights. Here's your host, the Leadership Accelerator, Eddie Turner.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Keep Leading Podcast, the podcast dedicated to leadership development and insights. I'm your host, Eddie Turner, the Leadership Accelerator. I work with leaders to accelerate performance and drive impact through the power of executive coaching, masterful facilitation, and motivational speaking. In many parts of the world today, and in many areas of life, we see a need for leadership, but not just any leadership, good leadership, effective leadership. But my guest today says we need more than good or effective leadership. In fact, he says to be good or effective, you must be courageous. So we're going to talk about courageous leadership. And we're going to do that with Rhett Power. Rhett Power is a best-selling author, an executive coach, and a columnist at Forbes. But that's not all. Rhett was named as one of the world's top 100 business bloggers and one of the best small business coaches in all of the United States. He's one of Marshall Goldsmith's 100 coaches and was named the #1 thought leader on entrepreneurship by Thinkers 360. You can find Rhett's work in mass media everywhere: Huffington Post, Business Insider, The Hill, Time Magazine, The Wall Street Journal, CNN Money, and more. Rhett is truly an authority and someone worth listening to and watching. Rhett, welcome to the Keep Leading Podcast.
Eddie, it is an absolute pleasure to be here, man. It has been too long. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. It has been too long since you and I have been able to catch up with each other, and either digitally or in person, for that matter.
You getting any sleep with that little one?
It's getting better.
All right. Well, just checking on you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for checking. It's getting better. But yes, she's a true blessing, and fatherhood changes things. In fact, it makes it even more important for me to be a courageous leader.
Indeed, brother. I mean, you gotta set the example, right?
I have to set the example in a whole new way now. So I'm excited to talk to you about this subject and some of the other cool things you're doing. But before we get into our main topic for today, I would just like it if you took a couple of moments to tell our listeners about some of the highlights from your incredible background.
Wow, that's a great question. Highlights, there's so many. Life is a blessing, and it's a blessing to wake up every day. And, honestly, every moment I've been on this journey of life, we all have tough times. We all have struggles, and we all, have things that we have to deal with, and that's just life. But to me, it's all a blessing. One of the things I was talking to somebody the other day, and it kind of dawned on me that my life has been sort of characterized by the word no, or not the word no, but by quitting. And so I have to sort of explain that. There have been several points in my life where I quit something so that I could say yes to something better. And quitting gave me the ability to see what was next for me and what I needed to do next. And it helped me it pushed me to do those things. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I was about 29 or 30 and I was scared to death. I was in this corporate job with Clear Channel Communications. I had the house, not literally the white picket fence, and not literally the 2-car garage, but, life was going in that direction,
Mm-hmm.
And I could see life 30 or 40 years from now. And it scared me to death that I would wake up one day and think, wow, there was so much that I could have done or so much that I didn't do. There's so much of life and the world to see and experience. Anybody that does this is not, but for me, that scared me to death, what that end result might be. And so I quit my job and joined the Peace Corps. Why, I don't know, but I needed to. I had that gut feeling that said, do it. You don't have anything to lose. You can always come back and get a job. But if you don't do this, you're going to miss something better. That was the best choice I've ever made. That 2 years of working in Uzbekistan, teaching kids about marketing and current events and more about life than anything in a country that was a dictatorship and very closed off. It was just such an incredible experience that led to my next thing, which was with USAID, working in Central Asia for about 6-7 years. Spending time in Afghanistan, spending time in some really amazing places and doing some amazing work to help people, better their lives. And then that led to quitting that job when I had that same itch, that same feeling that said, now it's time for that next stage, which was entrepreneurship. I quit again, everybody thought I was nuts. Everybody thought I was crazy. Quit this job that you love, that you're making an impact, to start a company that's probably going to fail. Those are people's exact words. But again, I needed to start that company. I needed to, and we started a children's toy company, which we were able to sell in 2015. But, we were able to take that company global, make toys for, Toys R Us and Walmart and Target and all the big named, stores, and do really, really well. Bring smiles to kids' faces, which was a joy. And then the itch again to sell, to say no again and quit again and say, okay, time to sell, time to move on to something else, which is what I'm doing now, which is coaching. So, all of those times I quit something to move on to something else that I needed to do, something greater. And that's what I mean by that.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And so your background highlights your time in the Peace Corps, which sounds like it was a leadership shaping experience. You were an entrepreneur that built a very successful toy business that affected the globe. And you said that the theme through it all was learning the secret to quitting, and that quitting is what allowed you to have opportunities for something new. Would you say that quitting takes courage?
It does, absolutely, because you're quitting. Oftentimes we equate that to a job or something like that, and all of those times, I quit something that was actually pretty secure. My job at the radio industry was very secure. My job at USAID was very secure. My job, to an extent, at the toy company, although businesses get disrupted all the time and fail all the time, was pretty secure. And so, each of those times you gave up something that was somewhat of a sure thing for something that was unknown. And it does take courage. But I want to live a life that I define. I want to live a life that has no regrets. I want to live a life where I listen to my gut and I listen to my heart, and my brain to an extent. But I want to live that way. And so, yes, that is what you said is accurate.
Okay. So for those listening to our conversation now, what's holding you back from something you would like to have? Rhett is saying you may need to muster the courage to quit something you have to get what you don't have.
Yeah. I mean, that's spot on. That's how the universe works. That's how life works, right? You often have to give something up to get something, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether, nothing comes for free. Everything has a cost. And the sooner you realize that, I think the easier, life is for most of us. You understand how that's how it works. But I think, Eddie, for me, what I would say is that you have to go after what you want. You have to go out. You have to take those risks sometimes. You have to swing big, as they say. And I know that's a cliche, but it really is true.
Yes. Now, when we talk about courage, people define it in different ways. How do you define courage?
That's a great question. I think courage, we often sort of, if you look at the definition in the dictionary, it's doing something that's uncomfortable or that scares you, right? And that's true to an extent. But I think courage, the way I look at it in sort of a business context, is that I would expand that definition a little bit. I think in business, you have to have, there are three elements of what makes courage work in business. And that's knowledge, faith, and action. And I think in business, you've got to have the knowledge that what you're doing, where you're going, that your course that you're on is the right course. Right? You've got to have the information to be able to make decisions. And we all have mechanisms to get to those decision points. We all have mechanisms in our companies to get to the knowledge that we need to make a decision. And then the faith comes when you believe that those are that's the right call, that sort of intrinsic belief that you're doing right, you're going in the right direction, that things are, this is the right decision. And again, we all get to that point in a different way, but we have to have that. We have to have the knowledge. We have to have the faith in order to make a big decision. The next part is action. And the action part is a lot of times where we often get sort of stuck. And if you look at companies that are in paralysis, sort of stuck on a decision, and I'll give you an example. I'm working with this healthcare company, and they had to buy this piece of equipment, this diagnostic piece of equipment. And they knew it was the right decision. They had the knowledge that it was the right decision. They believed it was the right. They had the faith. They believed it was the right decision, that it would save lives. They had people trained on how to use it. And they got stuck on the action piece, which was to pull the trigger to order it. Because they labored over the cost, it was $1 million something plus dollars. And so they labored over this for months and months and months and months. Right. So they knew it was the right thing. They needed it. It was the right call. Everybody believed that. But they labored over the action part, which is pulling the trigger on the cost. In the meantime, people died as a result of not pulling that trigger on that. So we often get stuck in that paralysis. And we've all experienced that in working for our companies. We've all experienced that maybe even in our own businesses, that sort of paralysis. And so that action piece is really critical to to making courageous decisions and making courageous, taking courageous action. And so that's how I break down courage, that you got to have those three elements to be a courageous company, to be a courageous leader.
I like that.
And you've got to look at it in that, and you almost have to look at it in that way. You have to break courage down in those three ways. So actually you can put sort of a process around it. You can get your head around decisions, right? Where are we stuck? Are we stuck in the knowledge piece? Are we stuck in the faith piece? Are we stuck in the action part? And then, you look at it that way, then you can kind of find out what you need so that you can make decisions and move forward.
I like that 3-step definition, Rhett. It indicates that it's not just a leap of faith, or that it's blind, or you're throwing caution to the wind. You're defining courage as you've got a base knowledge of something. Based on that knowledge, it's enough to where you can have faith in the knowledge, and the faith is strong enough to move you to action. So the courage is rooted in something. It's not blind.
Absolutely. I mean, you really just sort of crystallize that, right? It isn't blind. It's a process that you go through. And we see it all the time, that companies get stuck in one phase or the other of this sort of process, to me. Because if you want to think about it, I kind of look at it like this, like it's knowledge plus faith is paralysis. Faith plus action is kind of reckless. And knowledge and action is sort of the status quo. You kind of take these elements and sort of look at where companies get stuck. And it's actually pretty easy to see how you can help people sort of move forward and sort of break the cycle of sort of, being a lethargic sort of. And the way I look at this is, companies are dying right now, right? Mm-hmm. We're sort of in this, what I would call a business apocalypse, right? I mean, and I think that we're in this sort of four stages of the business apocalypse right now. We've got the business sector, all shapes and sizes and sectors are perishing. I mean, there's a literal graveyard of brand names out there who failed in the last, 15 years. And if you look at the Fortune 500, it used to stay on the Fortune 500 75 years. Now it's 11, right? Mm-hmm. So companies are getting disrupted right and left. Time is just, it seems like it's moving faster and faster now. You need time, but you don't have any time to make changes, to keep up with the technology, to keep up with the pace of change. And then, our old adage from our friend Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there. That is so true. You've got to redo and rethink the way you do business. I mean, the pandemic has made that really evident and really clear. People aren't going to stand for doing business and work the way that we used to. Yes. And then finally, the fourth stage is, we're wired to fear change, and change is happening so rapidly that we can sort of go into this shell, right? We can kind of retract into our shell and just hope that we don't get disrupted. All of those things are happening right now. Like the decisions are being driven by fear, the rapid pace of change, and then businesses are just getting disrupted. And so all this stuff is happening. And I think I look at courage in the context of knowledge, faith, and action, and you can see just the massive issue that companies, the ways that we can actually help companies get through all this change and get through and survive. I mean, it's absolutely essential that you reinvent and that you rethink the way you do things.
Very well said. Well, thank you, Rhett. I appreciate that example. I'm enjoying my conversation with Rhett Power. Rhett is a best-selling author, executive coach, columnist at Forbes, and one of Marshall Goldsmith's 100 coaches. We will have more with Rhett and this conversation around courageous leadership right after this.
Slow is just right if you're on vacation, a sloth, or describing QuickBooks. More like slow books. It sucks you in and slows you down with manual processes, integration difficulties, and glitchy delays that leave you scrambling for the numbers you need. Now is the time to switch to NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 financial system. NetSuite gives you visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR, e-commerce, and more. NetSuite can automate your processes and close your books in no time, no matter how big your business grows. Failing to switch to NetSuite will leave you stuck trying to make sense of your books while your competitors sprint ahead. 93% of surveyed businesses increase their visibility and control since switching to NetSuite. Special financing is back. NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financing program only for those ready to switch today. Head to netsuite.com/C-Suite right now. That's special financing at netsuite.com/C-Suite. Again, that's netsuite.com/C-Suite.
This episode is brought to you by HP Plus. In a world full of smart devices, shouldn't your printer be smart too? It is with HP Plus. These printers know when they're running low, so you always get the ink you need delivered right when you need it. Plus, you save up to 50% on ink, so you can print whatever you want, as much as you want, anytime you want. Huh, that is pretty smart. Get 6 free months of instant ink when you choose HP Plus. Conditions apply. Visit hp.com/smart for details.
This podcast is sponsored by Eddie Turner, LLC. Organizations who need to accelerate the development of their leaders call Eddie Turner the Leadership Accelerator. Eddie works with leaders to accelerate performance and drive impact. Call Eddie Turner to help your leaders one-on-one as their coach, or to inspire them as a group through the power of facilitation or a keynote address. Visit eddieturnerllc.com to learn more.
Hi, this is Sally Helgeson. I am an author and leadership coach, and you are listening to the Keep Leading podcast with Eddie Turner.
We're back, everyone. I'm talking to Rhett Power. He's a best-selling author, executive coach, and columnist at Forbes, and one of Marshall Goldsmith's 100 coaches. He is the #1 thought leader on entrepreneurship, as rated by Thinkers 360. And he was one of the top bloggers in the United States and one of the best business coaches in the United States. So a lot to learn from Rhett as we talk about courageous leadership. Rhett, before our break, you defined what courage is and talked about why it matters to companies and their leadership style and their organizations. But when we talk about businesses, business always cares about ROI, return on investment. Is there a return on courage?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, change is hard, right? And the hardships that come from not changing will be harder. So I think courage can liberate you from paralysis and inaction. And that, honestly, I think is your return, right? I think today, in today's sort of the business climate that we're in and the world that we live in, the return on courage is growth. The return on courage is customer and employee retention. I think the return on courage is, in some respects, survival. And I think also, I kind of look at as courage as sort of a prerequisite for survival and a prerequisite for change. And I think the more courageous you are as a leader and as a company, I think what the return ends up being is growth and I mean, obviously profitability and just a company that you can be proud of that will survive what's going on in today's business. And I think, so in a lot of ways, it's opportunity. That courage gives you that opportunity for all of those things.
Can you teach courage, or does a leader just have it?
I think some have it, but I think that process, that knowledge, faith, and action, and we have a sort of proprietary at Courageous, we have a proprietary system called Price. And through that, we do teach companies how to be more courageous. If you break it down into that knowledge, faith, and action piece, right? If you start looking at your decision-making and through those lenses, then I think you can teach courage. You can sort of put a process around it, right?
Well, that's true. And I should mention that this episode is called Courageous Leadership, but that's also actually the name of what, Rhett?
Well, it is the name of our leadership consultancy.
Yes.
just since you mentioned it, we kind of look at ourselves as liberators, right? Liberators from, that's how we've always done it. Liberators from that watch your back culture to a got your back culture. We help companies liberate from that hardwired sort of ego, that transactional thinking, that reactive decision making. And we help companies make believers. We talk a lot about, in our consulting, we talk a lot about believership. Mm-hmm. We think that having believership in a company, inside a company, part of that culture is really essential. We kind of consider ourselves fear fighters because we all know people who operate based on fear, right? We know that the type of leaders that use fear as a motivator, or use fear as a way to, scare people, and the fear that often drives our decision making. We see that a lot, you and I, in our work, and so we also see ourselves as fear fighters. So that's what we do. We help companies liberate themselves from these things that hold them back.
I love that. From a watch your back culture to a got your back culture. That's powerful. And you're doing that for organizations as large as Google, Snapchat, Major League Baseball, and others, from what I understand.
Yes, sir. We are.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic.
It is a lot of fun. And it is a lot of fun. We have this thing called the Courage Confessional. And it's where you go in and you confess your sins of not being courageous. And it's amazing to see the light bulbs that go off when people have to verbalize that, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a totally confidential thing. You do it on your iPhone. You do it. We don't look at it. We don't call you out on the courageous behavior. But it often gets emotional, and it's a powerful way to acknowledge sort of where you are mm-hmm. currently and where you want to go.
Wonderful. Well, Rhett, I think you're doing some pretty incredible work in this area around courage and around leadership. But there's some other interesting things that you're involved in that I would love for you to tell my audience about. We want people to tune in to a certain TV series. Can you talk about that?
Yes. You brought up my reality show debut. So I'm on the second season of this show called The Social Movement, which is Chris Lavoie is producing this program, and it. The first season airs actually, it's Labor Day, the end of the summer. And that's Memorial Day, isn't it? I get those two confused all the time.
Yes. End of summer is Labor Day. Start of summer is Memorial Day.
Labor Day, right? So it airs starting Labor Day, season 1. I'm on season 2. We just wrapped up filming last week in Miami for season 2. And the whole point of the show is, and the reason I agreed to do it is, it's not one of these gotcha TV shows. It's not one of these gotcha reality shows. It actually brings together entrepreneurs, scientists, doctors, really smart people. I don't know why I got selected.
I know why.
And we're brought together in these teams, random teams that none of us knew who we were going to get selected to be with, to solve some of the world's pressing problems like hunger and cancer. I think I can disclose that I was on the cancer team. I think, if not, bleep that part of it out when this airs. But, hunger, suicide, the UN development goals. So the program took those goals, those massive world issues, global issues that we've been, all of us as a people, as humanity, have been struggling with for, since the beginning of time. And they brought together, these genius people to solve these problems in a business way, right? So you had 4 days. It was called 4 Days to Save the World. And it was an incredible experience. We worked 18-hour days to come up with a business plan, to pitch. I had an incredible team. One of the young people on my team is suffering from cancer. We had several cancer survivors on our team. So it was real personal for them. And I think, we came up with an incredible solution to cancer. And we pitched it. I can't talk about the results. We'll have to wait for that. But it was an incredible experience. 4 days to save the world, social movement. I think people are really going to love this show because it really illustrates, Eddie, we're struggling as a society, particularly here in the US, on how we talk to each other, how we work together, how we communicate with one another. And what I loved about this show was it brought 11 strangers together, diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, diverse people. And we had to learn how to communicate and talk to one another and listen to one another, more importantly. In 4 days to come up with a business plan and a pitch deck to pitch to investors, and to pitch to you, to the public, because that pitch is going to go public and the public's going to pick who they want to fund. So when the show goes live, when our season goes live. So that's why I chose to be on the show, because it just brought this unique group of people together to try to solve a massive problem.
And where can people get access to the show?
So when this first season comes on, it is an Amazon Prime show. It's also on Apple TV. It'll be on Hulu. It'll be on all of the streaming platforms. You'll be able to get it everywhere, but I think it starts on Amazon Prime. That technology stuff is all way beyond how my brain works. So it's on all of those platforms that you can download and watch. And it was just a lot of fun to do. And I think very, very wholesome, good programming, watching smart people come together and communicate with one another and work together. And that was the special part of it for me.
Excellent. Well, if it's on Amazon Prime, we know it will have a large audience, and it's probably going to make it to, I would assume, Apple TV.
It already, I think when it launches, I think it's already going to be out on Apple. Yeah.
Excellent. So more of the streaming stations basically is where we should have folks looking for this. Well, I can't wait to see it. And I'll be able to tell people I knew you when, because I'm sure when this is over, then the next stop is Hollywood. You were in Miami filming this. The next one you'll be in Hollywood, and you'll be on the bigger screen. So congratulations.
There is some stuff in the works, I hope. And, it was a lot of fun. I never thought I would enjoy hair and makeup for 2 hours a day and all that stuff that goes with, there is that kind of stuff that goes with it. It was fun. It was an experience, and I'd do it again anytime with that group of people, definitely.
Fantastic. So Rhett, here on the Keep Leading podcast, we always like to know what helps a leader like you keep leading. Is there a piece of advice or a quote that you use that helps you keep leading?
Man, if you ask me that question every day, it would change because of context and of what's going on that day. But after last week's experience working with these incredible people who have survived cancer, who are fighting cancer, but yet decide to get on a plane and come to Miami and try to help others get through this massive problem, and be so unselfish about themselves and their story and want to help solve this problem for others. I just think perseverance for me is just looking at them and saying, gosh, they're unselfish, that they want to help others. And I think if you live life like that, when you get to that ripe old age and you're sitting on that front porch in your rocking chair, you can look back on life as having lived a life of meaning and significance. And so, today, what I'd say is that just being unselfish or selfless and persevere are what I'm really thinking about today, and how important those traits are in a leader and how important they are for me. You caught me on a day where it's about perseverance and being unselfish.
Wonderful. We'll take it. And I want my listeners to be able to follow you. I didn't realize until today that you have almost 150,000 followers on LinkedIn. So for the few people that are not already following you, tell us where we can find you.
So you can find me on LinkedIn. Obviously, it's a great place to communicate with me directly. Website, rhettpower.com. You can also find more about Courageous and our work with the Courage Bootcamp and some of our work at Courageous at courageous.io. Reach out on LinkedIn. Look, I think just because, Eddie, you have a show and, I have a show and we do this media stuff, it doesn't mean not to reach out, right? I mean, I know you and I both pay attention to what people write on LinkedIn and when they communicate with us. So don't be, afraid to reach out and talk to us directly and communicate with us. So I just encourage that. But LinkedIn is a great place, a great way to expand your network and to get in touch with people.
Wonderful. And the name of your show again?
So it's called the Power Lunch Live. Been doing that live show on LinkedIn for about 3 years. However, we are going to change it pretty soon, Eddie, to Courageous Live or some variation of the name. But we're going to really be interviewing people who have had courageous careers and done courageous things. I want to dig into what motivated them to do that and the result of that return on that courageous act or that courageous behavior or that courageous thing that they did. So I want to dig into that a little bit more and why people do what they do.
Excellent. Well, we will put all that into the show notes so people can know how to find you, connect with you, and follow you. You are someone who is truly worth following in your writings or on television or wherever you're at. It is the place to be. So thank you, Rhett, so much for being a guest here on the Keep Leading podcast, helping us to be more effective as leaders as we manifest courageous leadership and keep leading.
Thank you, Eddie. Been a pleasure.
And thank you for listening. That concludes this episode, everyone. I'm Eddie Turner, the Leadership Accelerator, reminding you that leadership is not about our title or our position. Leadership is action. Leadership is an activity. It's not the case of once a leader, always a leader. It's not a garment we put on and take off. We must be a leader at our core and allow it to emanate in all we do. So whatever you're doing, always keep leading.
Thank you for listening to your host, Eddie Turner, on the Keep Leading podcast. Please remember to subscribe to the Keep Leading podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen. For more information about Eddie Turner's work, please visit eddieturnerllc.com.
Thank you for listening to C-Suite Radio, turning the volume up on business. This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.